right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining the call this morning on the QTX sound masking platform. My name is Mark Foerderer. I am the field sales engineer for the North Central and South Central Territory. I have been in the audio, video, and sound masking industry for almost 20 plus years in all different facets. So currently I am a building infrastructure field sales engineer supporting the sound masking and both Chia products. I reside in Kansas City. Been there for about 14 years now or so, originally from the North Country up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. So that's a little bit about me. Been with Biamp 3-4 years, originally from Cambridge Sound a number of years ago. So happy to be able to sharing some information with you today. So today we're going to be talking about our new QTX sound masking platform. Many of you may have had some introduction to this a while back, as this has been on its way to release for quite some time, and we're at the peak of information with it, as it's to be released very soon in its entirety. So we're going to go through it today and really cover some basics that should be of value from a product standpoint and also from an application standpoint of how to use this. And then at the end, of course, we can do some questions and things. So please submit those in the chat. So the agenda for today is to go over the sound masking system introduction, a little bit about it. We're going to cover all of its controllers. We're going to cover the current lineup of sound masking loudspeakers and transducers that are associated with the QTX platform. We're going to talk a little bit about the application and what makes this system very powerful. And then we're going to add in a little bit of the new NPX convenience paging platform as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. So the new QTX sound masking platform, there's some very key takeaways, and I will focus on those takeaways as we go through this presentation. This is a platform that is going to be able to bring standard indirect masking and direct field sound masking together into a single architecture, so we can deploy numerous types of sound masking all under a single platform. There's going to be 4 specialized controllers within this platform. It's also going to be built on modern networking architecture. So these devices will be standalone if needed, but also they will have the ability to be networked together using the standard audio protocols of ADB or Dante, which makes this a networked architecture platform, and it will include standard analog inputs and logic I/O, similar to the previous QT Pro platform. Control of the system will be very simple with internal web servers. Some of you might be familiar with our previous QT Pro product, which was a web server. This will be very similar. Client software for application, and then it will have some future monitoring and management capabilities with Biamp's SageView software. Okay. So it's built with a very familiar form factor. If you're again familiar with our QT Pro product, this looks very similar, just a new color and rebranded. Going to have the same type of LCD panel readout that the QT Pro product did. 4 buttons for easy adjustment on the front panel. Be able to seamlessly integrate with Fire Panel, and we're going to be able to bring some audio connectivity for background music and paging into this set of processors, as well as with this particular platform, they've added some privacy sign capability to be able to allow you to know if the privacy is taking place, the system is functioning, and you'll be able to now connect directly into this with a microphone, so you can do a talk now paging scenario directly to this processor with a push to talk microphone. So let's talk about the 4 specialized controllers real quick. The first 2 controllers I'm going to jump right into are the QTX 300D and 300D and the QTX 600 and 600D. The D version will be a version that allows Dante to be able to move audio around from each processor with the Dante protocol, and the QTX 300 and 600 without the D will be an AVB version. Now these 2 units are very similar to the QT Pro product that were previous. These are for passive and active emitters for the down firing type solution with the emitters. The QTX 300 has 3 outputs and the 600 has 6 outputs. So again, very similar to the QT Pro product. There are 2 additional processors in this line. This is the QTX 800 and 800D. The QTX 800 and D versions have 8 ohm outputs for single loudspeaker connectivity. This version is similar but yet different to the previous Dynasound DS8000, where there was a single 8 ohm loudspeaker connected to 8 outputs for granular adjustments. This 800 will be a product that can do both the indirect and direct field masking. And then there's an additional processor, which is the QTX 805 and 805D. This processor is going to be very useful in that it has those 8 line level outputs in addition to 8 ohm outputs. So with this processor, you'll be able to feed an amplifier to do some basic 70 volt loudspeaker sound masking systems, both direct and indirect. So the 4 controllers allow us to do emitters, passive and active, like we've done in the past with the 300 and the 600. And with the 800 and the 805, we're able to do a granular approach and a simple approach of both direct and indirect in an 8 ohm or 70 volt fashion to give us a broad spectrum of choices to do sound masking as needed. Let's quickly walk through the available loudspeakers that we have for sound masking. The current upfiring 8 ohm loudspeaker that we have is the DS1357. This is its predecessor was the DS1356 from which was a Biamp. It was a Dynasound SKU. Has been redone and rebranded into a 1357 and labeled as a Biamp. This is our 8 ohm upfiring loudspeaker. And then we have the DS1339, which is the loudspeaker with a transformer to do 70 volt approaches as well. Both of these loudspeakers are designed for upfiring type approaches above the ceiling when those become applicable. On the emitter side, we still have the flagship passive adjustable emitter with UTP topology that was flagship with the QT Pro product. Have also the active emitter with the UTP topology, which is a product that was added later in Cambridge's history to do paging and background music in conjunction with sound masking. And then we have the additional SKU that is called the DS1320. And this is basically our active emitter that was redesigned to be a 4 ohm device with 2-wire topology. So this can now be used with our QTX 800 and 805 in a single connection 4 ohm topology to do some granular adjustments. Can also be used for paging and background music. So those transducers, it's important to know that those are the same transducers that we had previously and are backward compatible with the new platform. Okay. So let's jump into the controllers real quick, a little bit more deep. The QTX 300 and 600, 3 outputs and 6 output devices. It's important to know, here's one of the key takeaways, that the patented 4-channel non-correlated audio technology that was flagship to the Cambridge product is built directly into these processors, just like it was with the QT Pro. Fire panel integration, connectivity for music and background, background music and paging, and some direct connections for line or mic level audio. Dual network ports for AVB and Dante, privacy sign capability, and of course, as I said earlier, the D version will be a optional Dante operation if you need Dante networking. The back of the unit looks like this. I'm going to show you the back of all of the units in succession here real quick. The left side of each of these processors is going to remain pretty much the same, and the right side of the processors will change per unit. On the back of this QTX300, we have GPIO connectivity that allows us to do some push-to-talk, some privacy indication. We've got an emergency mute to connect to the fire alarm control panel. Dual network port connections. These network connections are integrated into this system in standard Biamp fashion, where you can do AVB or Dante with these ports to be able to connect processors together and move audio around. The reason there is 2 ports is because you can either do control and media on one port, or you can separate control on one and media on another. This is the use case for that is when you're working on someone else's local area network that doesn't probably don't want to put the audio and media on their network, so you can put control on their network and build a separate network for media, or you can bring them together on one. So all of these will have the dual network port. On the right side of this QTX300 is 3 outputs, and something else to bring your attention to on the previous product. These outputs were actually called zones. This QT product would have 3 zones. With this new QTX platform, they are called outputs. And that is because with these outputs, they are able to be virtually zoned in the software, which is different than the previous product, which were fixed zone outputs. And I will show you that later on, okay? The QTX 600 is the exact same processor, just with 6 outputs. Those outputs, again, can be virtually zoned in the software. The QTX 600 and 300 are completely backwards compatible with both the standard emitter and the active emitter as well. Daisy-chained emitter connections, UTP cabling, RJ45 connections. It's important to know that the emitter counts and the sound masking topology, the way that the emitters are wired, are exactly the same as the QT Pro product was previously. So these are backward compatible. You can remove a QT Pro processor that's previously installed and go ahead and replace it with a new QTX processor, either a 300 and 600, and you can replace them, and the topology works exactly the same. So completely backwards compatible, okay? So keep that in mind as we move forward with the product. All topology remains the same with the emitters, okay? We still, again, back to our emitter types, we still have the the standard emitter and the active emitter. These are going to be products that we use typically in ACT ceilings, but also are very, very useful in multiple ceiling types, such as hard deck, open structure. Do a lot of open structure with our emitter products. And also, given that architecture continues to be a challenge and becomes complex, we're able to do things like clouds and mixed open type platforms very well that competitors struggle to do with the emitters. Always use our active emitter when it comes to paging and background music due to its extended frequency response and power. The emitter mounting accessories have not changed also since the QT Pro. I'll just bring your attention to a couple of them. We have across the board accessories for drywall, for hard lid, for ACT, for beams and such. But the key ones are the universal bracket, which is the AEUB X, either white or black. Universal bracket, this is probably our most common accessory to be used in open deck and hard lid ceilings that can't be penetrated. And then on the bottom there is the plenum back box, the CCM1. This is a newer product, a couple of years now probably, that is designed for plenum applications where conduit is required. So typically in the Chicago market, this plenum box is going to be required, and it works with both the active and the standard emitter. All right, let's jump into the QTX 805. This is an 8-output device. It's got 8 direct outputs for 4-ohm loudspeakers. It also has 8 line-level outputs to use with 70-volt amplifiers. Built-in 8 sound masking generators. That's very powerful. You can actually have 8 different generators doing different zones if needed for different types of infrastructure and architecture. Very powerful. Again, fire panel integration, music, background paging, direct connections for mic line level audio, and network ports for AVB and Dante, and privacy sign capability, just like the QTX 300 and 600. Back of the unit, as I said, everything on the left is the same, with the configurable GPIO, the fire alarm controls, the network, and the audio inputs. On the right on this device, you will see there are 8 4-ohm loudspeaker outputs on the right for direct connectivity to a 4-ohm or 8-ohm loudspeaker. And in the more centralized are the 8 line level outputs that can be used to feed amplifiers to do a standard simple 70-volt sound masking system. The transducers that we might use with this device are the DS1339, the DS1390, which is our low profile, and a Kubo 3T, which is a new loudspeaker that we have been experimenting with for sound masking. Has been working very well in higher open deck applications. So we're able to use this open structure, enclosed ceilings. And again, this is going to be a platform that is going to be used in conjunction with an amplifier to do some very simple strings of loudspeakers for a more cost-effective sound masking solution with a 70-volt line approach. Again, always use direct field for paging and background music applications. The Kubo 3T is a great use case for that. Here's some topology, example topology of how an 805 might go together. On the bottom here, I'm showing the QTX 805 connected to the web GUI software via the network, feeding that into a revamp amplifier. Biamp has a line of revamp amplifiers that we'll be using for sound masking. And out from the amplifier is simple daisy chained 70-volt connections with 16.2 loudspeakers to do some zoning per output. So to use multiple ceiling types, one per zone. And the amplifiers that are available are a single zone 120 watt, a 2-zone 120 watt, and a 4-zone 120 watt amplifier in the revamp series. So this approach allows you to do a simple, cost-effective approach to sound masking if you're in a competitive situation. The last unit in the line is the QTX 800. This has 8 direct 4-ohm loudspeaker outputs. Again, this one is used for individual controlled loudspeakers. This is going to be more of a problem solver, probably not your go-to processor for sound masking systems, because it is probably the most costly way to do sound masking, but gives you the most granularity and control for your system. Same features apply as all the rest of the devices. And the back of the device looks like this. Everything on the left, again, is the same. On the right is the 8 4-ohm loudspeaker outputs on the back of this device. And this one allows us to do probably the most in all-in-one box. Again, the most expensive way to do sound masking, but the most granular. So we can do open structure, enclosed ACT, We can do even some under raised floor access type approaches if needed, and hard lid ceilings. We can do that all with this particular processor when there's multiple need for multiple transducers in complex ceilings. The key takeaway for this product, the 800, is that each of the outputs are adjustable individually for sound masking spectrum and audio level of the source that's coming out of each loudspeaker. Okay. The QTX 800 is a little different than the other three in that this is a direct ceiling mounted unit. There's a couple of ways to mount it right in the ceiling, attached to the tile, the ceiling tile with the tile bridge. This also, because this is a ceiling mounted device, it is a PoE plus power device. Can be operated in single and dual cable mode. So this one does require PoE power to operate, and it's obviously plenum rated for air handling spaces. Okay. The topology of this device looks a little bit like this. On the right, I have a dotted area there that would indicate my ceiling. And within that ceiling, I have a number of QTX 800 processors with individual loudspeakers attached to each of the processors. Those processors are connected back to a PoE switch, then connected to the network and operated by the QTX web software. Each of those outputs are individually adjustable for complex situations. We can take this to another level, and we can use multiple transducers with this system and really get into a situation where we can do some direct field, some open deck right above the ceiling, even some DDS D1 transducers in hard lids. All of this can be done under one platform to maximize the performance of your system. So again, these are 8 loudspeakers per controller. You can do direct or indirect, very flexible. And with this also, we can do one more thing with this 800. We can double up on these devices because of their 4 ohm capability on the output. We can actually put true transducers on each of these outputs, which becomes a little more cost effective. We do this to be able to be competitive with some of the competitors that can do multiple loudspeakers on a single output and meet specifications that require that. This takes the cost per square foot with the QTX 800 and cuts it in half. So this is an option as well. So quite a few more options with these processors. Okay. So the takeaways is that we can mix and match all of these processors into one system that can be scalable from small to large, overcome any architectural ceiling challenge. That's a big takeaway. Most of our competitors do not have the ability to take on complex challenges in architecture. They have a few products that they utilize in all of those architecture, whether it's the right choice or not, kind of shoehorn them in. We're able to kind of take that to the next level with these choices. And because we have these modular choices, we can actually take the approach with our 805 and take a approach where we're doing a simple system that can be competitive and price shopped as well. So kind of cover all the bases with this product. Okay. All right, so let's jump into the power of this. This is an application. This will kind of tie everything together that I just talked about in use case. So if you use our sound masking design team services, you will typically send them a floor plan that might look like this when you want to request sound masking design assistance. And for the purpose of application today, I'm going to act as the sound masking design team designer, and I'm going to look at this this floor plan that you hypothetically have sent in, and you're going to have marked up the areas for me to say, hey, I need these areas as required coverage in this sound masking system for this floor. So I'm going to look at it, I'm going to evaluate it, and I'm going to say, okay, as I see on your floor plan here, I've got open office architecture on each end of this floor plan, and that open office architecture has a standard 9-foot ACT fiberglass ceiling. As a designer, for me, that's a no-brainer. That's a standard ACT emitter that I'm going to use in that area of the floor plan. In the corridors that are needing some coverage, let's say that this is an expensive fiberglass ACT that the architect is very proud of, and he is not allowing any type of penetrations. So we might look at this with a 70-volt type approach. It looks pretty consistent, so we're going to put some speakers above this ACT to do the sound masking there. All the individual spaces I'm going to look at and say, well, we've got multiple individual spaces here, from conference rooms to huddle spaces to offices, and I might want to use my granular approach so I can do individual adjustments with these rooms. Typically an office also is going to have a different ceiling, maybe a different height, and sometimes mineral fiber. So we might want to use an addressable system, which is the 800 for these. And the last area is the lounge. And this is an interesting space because more and more we get asked to put sound masking in spaces that are not typical for speech privacy. And a lounge like this is actually one of those spaces. Typically, sound masking is asked in these areas for a couple of reasons. For some good background ambience, sound masking can provide in a space like this where people are lounging and munching and things like that. Also to connect with other spaces in the floor to keep the consistency of the sound masking as you enter and leave the lounge. So a number of reasons sound masking might go in here. This space can typically be the most architecturally challenging. Typically in a lounge like this, you're going to find a maybe 14-foot high ceiling, open deck with some spray-on insulation. We can theorize on the left side of this over by the pantry area that the architect could easily possibly put a 10 or 12-foot drywall soffit about 9 feet high off the ground. And on the right side where the seating area, architect may have decided to put some ACT clouds scattered in there to break up the ceiling. So now we have a space that has multiple ceiling types and surfaces. And so we're going to need to attack that with a addressable system, probably our QTX 800 as well. So I've looked at this from its architectural standpoint now in a number of different fashions. So let's go ahead and start to put this together with our new QTX platform. In our in our open office platforms on the greens on the right and left, I said I was going to use a QT emitter. So that's a QTX 600 system for me. In the corridors, we talked about using a firing 70-volt approach in there. So I'm going to add an 805, which will give us the ability to do that. And in these private spaces and in the lounge, I'm going to need some granular adjustments. So I'm going to add a QTX 800 for each of those areas. So I've got my processors in place now to meet all of my needs with my transducers. And then with the power of QTX, we're going to tie them all together via the network. Okay. So now we've taken several different types of processors, multiple types of architecture, and we put them into one manageable system. How does that work and what's the benefit? With the one manageable system, we can do a number of things. They act as one system. You can get into the software, you can view them as one system, each individual processor, make adjustments, all the things that are needed from one single portal. It also gives us the ability for all of these processors to talk to each other. So in the event that we need to connect this system to a fire panel for the purposes of muting sound masking, during a fire alarm activation, we can take the closest processor to the fire alarm panel, connect it to the relay, and when the fire alarm panel is activated, it will mute all of the processors with that one single connection without having to connect to all of the other devices. Okay? In our previous product, one remembers we had to connect to all of our devices to make that happen. So one connection mutes all of the devices on the network, whether you have 2 or 20, you can connect to all of them. This same feature is available with audio inputs. So if you bring an audio input for a paging or background music signal, this it allows that background music signal and page to be broadcasted to all of the other processors without the need for any other connection. Okay, so that is the power of the network with QTX. Okay? Additionally, the other power behind QTX is what we call virtual zoning. This feature is very new. As I mentioned earlier, the previous product, which was our QT Pro product, the outputs on that device were fixed zones. On this new product, they are outputs because we can take those outputs, and once the system has been configured for sound masking, we can go ahead and virtually zone the outputs to create control zones and information zones for paging or background music. An example, on the left side of this floor plan, I have a QT600 that I'm using, and for the purposes of discussion, let's say I'm using 5 outputs on this processor. On the right side, I have the same processor, and I'm using 6 outputs of this processor. I can take any of those outputs once they have been configured for sound masking, and I can group them into a virtual zone. So I can take all 5 outputs on the left or all 6 outputs on the right, and I can group them into a virtual zone where you can control that zone with one control, one slider, or you can send a page or background music to that zone as needed. Okay, that virtual zoning can be done in a number of fashions. You can actually break that up where you can take outputs 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 on the left and make a virtual zone with it. The same on the right with outputs 1 and 4 or 2, 3, 5, and 6, and create virtual zones for control, background music, or paging. And you can take it one step further where we can actually tie outputs together from 2 separate processors to create a virtual zone. So if outputs 5 and 6 on the right and 4 and 5 on the left needed to be a virtual zone for the purposes of sending a page, background music, or control, you could bring those together and create a virtual zone. This is a very powerful feature in that it allows the zoning to be done at a date when the setup is done. You don't have to understand the zoning completely at the beginning of the design phase. Sound masking gets installed, it gets in set up and tuned, and then you can go ahead and arrange these virtual zones as needed for the paging and masking and control portion of the system. So very powerful platform. So some takeaways for the whole QTX platform: front panel adjustment, local tuning via web and software, allows us to do very large systems much easier than we used to be able to do in the past, able to share audio across the platform, virtual zoning, a unified control with a single PC, and there will be some future error reporting of the system as well. Another very important feature that has been built into the QTX platform, Biamp has built in their standard level of network security, which is part of all of the other Tessera and audio-based platforms that Biamp has. 3 major network security levels. There's going to be multi-role security, so you can set up unique passwords and access to the device for an administrator, a commissioner, a user, and a viewer. Port authentication to meet IEEE 802.1x, So that this is, if you don't know what that is, that's port-based security enabled by the administrator. And then everything is 120-bit, 20 and 28-bit encrypted on the device. So this is pretty much standard security stuff, again, that Biamp builds into all their devices and is going to help you play nice with the IT folks if you're working to put this on a local area network for your client. So key takeaway there is security. And then to finalize this, it allows you to meet all of the architectural needs that you might approach, right? Because of the multiple controllers, the multiple loudspeakers and transducers. We can share analog sources, and we can secure and deploy this on a client's network. Okay. And the last thing before we jump into a little bit of the NPX is, for those of you that are not familiar with SageView, SageView is a freeware from Biamp. It's a browser-based software platform that enables technology managers and integrators to manage all of their Biamp devices via the network. So this software is available, and it is going to be available to work with QTX as well. It allows you to have comprehensive view of all the Biamp devices, can monitor the network of the devices, remotely do firmware, and here are a couple of neat things. Integrates with LDAP infrastructure, and it has a RESTful API control protocol built in, so that if building management has a building management system that they are currently using for monitoring, let's say HVAC systems, network lighting systems, security systems, SageView can integrate directly with those building management systems so that you could actually build a dashboard for your Biamp devices and your sound masking that they can monitor as well in part of building management systems. So very powerful. That'll be part of that. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. We're going to quickly talk about NPX convenience paging. Biamp has released a NPX convenient paging station. This is a network paging station that is going to be available for use with both the Tessera and the new QTX software platform. Comes in a couple of options: gooseneck and handset, desktop or wall mount with accessories. And this device is network ready and will be able to be used both AVB or Dante, whichever platform you choose, standard PoE. And it is intelligent. It will know which protocol you're using just when you connect it to the system, either AVB or Dante. It will be managed to set up through the software. It'll come in a couple of different flavors: 4-button panel with 4 buttons that allow you to do 4 page codes, and then a 10-button model that allow you to do up to 999 page codes if you need a bunch of different page codes to be able to reach to zones. Pretty standard and simple front panel scroll through GUI. It also has the ability to do some pre-recorded message playback. There's about an hour's worth of storage in there to do some simple messages where you can do local recording, push a button and record a message directly into the microphone and save it as a pre-recorded message for future use. Live paging with talk now indication, push to talk, preambles, and there are 16 levels of paging priority for use with this this convenience paging station as well. How do we tie that into the system? Very simply, let's go ahead and put our system back together with all of our processors for all of the architecture that we need, and we've configured our virtual zones as we might have needed them. And once we've done that virtual zoning for audio background music, we're going to go ahead and add our NPX paging stations, connect them directly to the network, and assign those buttons on those paging stations directly to our virtual zones. And we've created ourselves a simple convenience paging and sound masking background music system all under one single platform. So that should paint a very good picture of the application, the capability of the system. To summarize, summary of this platform in overview is these are the takeaways. We can do direct and indirect systems all in one platform. To digress just a little bit, for those of you that are familiar with our previous platforms, which is the QT Pro platforms and the Dynasound platforms, those have pretty much been end of life and have been combined into this one platform where we can do direct and indirect field systems all in one. Virtual zoning, networked audio transports, network security, convenience paging, future capability with SageView for monitoring, and then, of course, as we finished up with NPX convenience paging, desktop wall mount versions, and in a PoE fashion with both QTX and Tessera. Okay. All right. So, how to be successful with the QTX? Sound masking education. So, on Biamp's training website, there is some training modules that I would guide you to if you have not taken any of these modules. And let me run through them. There is a module up there called Fundamentals of Speech Privacy and Sound Masking Online. That is a very good module for the basics of understanding sound masking, speech privacy, what it's for, and how to talk about it. If you at all engage in sound masking sales and conversation, that's almost a must to be able to understand some core things. The QT Pro products online and application, that covers our QT Pro, and so does the QT Pro installation. The QT Pro product has been end of life. However, 90% of the fundamentals in those modules are transferable into the QTX because the emitter topology and the way that system gets wired and implemented is 90% the same. So great takeaways there. And very soon there'll be QTX Pro product certification coming as well. It is important to know that the QTX system is going to be a certified product. So once all of this is in place and the product is released, the certification is completed, Biamp will be requiring the certification to be able to access the product in similar fashion to many of other Biamp's other Bochia and Tessera products as well. So coming soon, we're hoping sometime in the last quarter, we get the new certification online. And also keep in mind that all of these certifications do have associated AVIXA and BIXI credits associated with them. All right. Support resources, Biamp's website, www.biamp.com. All things Biamp available there. There still is an individual website for Cambridge Sound. And so just to clarify, the sound masking products fit in under Biamp Cambridge Sound. Cambridge Sound is now the product line under the Biamp heading. So Cambridge Sound still has its separate website for the sound masking products. Cornerstone website. This is a Biamp's technical knowledge support. This is years and years of knowledge, technical knowledge that has been accumulated and available for certified dealers and all of us to be able to get support on the product. And there's a ton of QTX information up there already, including short videos and such on software and setup and all kinds of different things that are associated with the new QTX. And then, of course, technical support. So on our website is this technical support contact for post-sales when you're setting up systems, programming systems. We have a very, very good tech support organization that can support you in the setup and the programming of the systems. Okay. And continued on, we have our partner request a quote sound masking team. We have a dedicated sound masking team that is their only job is to provide sound masking bill materials, designs, and associated budgetary deliverables. So you can access them by sending your request into cambridgesound.com/quote. That's also available on Biamp's and Cambridge's website. You can find that link to be able to do so. All right, thank you guys for listening today. I appreciate your time, and I hope I brought something of value to you. And we look forward to the next webinar. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.